Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of Ocean in a Drop, where we talk about stories where individuals with really high impact and really successful careers share their journey and give more insights about how to pursue such a career. So today I'm super excited to introduce Subhashish Bhadra. So Subhashish pursued a BA in economics from St. Stephen's College, following which he was one of the 9 candidates who achieved 100 percentile in CAT in 2011. Contrary to what most of us would do at that score, he proceeded to take up a job at McKinsey immediately after his bachelor's, where he worked in sectors such as pharma, steel, and banking. He then received an M.Phil in economics from Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar and now is working at Omidyar Network, providing capital to both for profit and non profit entrepreneurs who are helping make technology safer and empowering individuals. Working for issues like privacy, artificial intelligence, misinformation, and digital identity in India and Africa. So, Subhashish, thank you so much for taking time to come on this podcast. I'm pretty sure that all of our listeners are very excited to hear more about how you've been making different choices in your life.
Thanks for inviting me, Mr. Excited about this.
Yeah. So, I would just initially want to talk more about your student life. And, a lot of students who are listening to this podcast would like to see themselves in spaces that you are currently existing in. So, I would like to talk about more your journey as a student. So, I've seen one of your YouTube videos where you've mentioned about how affected you were mentally while trying to figure out your professional life because of setting standards which are really high throughout your career. Now, I can safely assume that with the choices that you've made as a student, you've raised several eyebrows with the unconventional choices that you've made. So, one really important thing that I think our listeners would like to know is that what were the guiding principles that drove such decisions and how have they changed over time compared to when you were a student and how it is right now?
Sure. So as a student, I was always very studious, was with my books throughout school and high school and all of that. But I wasn't necessarily, the topper of the class or anything, probably ranking the top 20% or 10%.
Got it.
And then the boards happened where I happened to top Delhi and be third all over India. And I think that created a media frenzy for 2 or 3 days. And then
Okay.
it really affected my mental state for a long time to come, because even as I entered college, everyone kind of viewed me as, hey, he's the topper guy, right?
Yeah.
So it makes you feel differently. But for me, as I told you, it resulted in a lot of mental health issues,
Right.
because after that, especially that kind of intense media frenzy with
Exactly.
media people fighting for your interviews, and then
Yeah.
you realize you'll probably never have that again in your life, no matter what you do. I mean, you have to be really, really successful to have
Yeah.
media chase you like that.
Yeah.
And so that in a way troubled me, put me kind of into depression. I had to be on medication and therapy and all of that.
Got
But
it.
at the same time, I think it freed me. It freed me because it felt like, look, I've proved what I had to prove, and now I can make decisions that I want to make. And therefore, the choices that I made, the guiding principle through all of that always was, is this something I enjoy myself doing? I don't think I've ever taken up a role, an opportunity, etc., where I feel like I'll suffer too much, and for the sake of the career, I will do it. I have not made those kind of choices because I've always felt that even if you take opportunities which might not make sense, but because you enjoy them, you do them so well that you excel in them, life will be relatively smooth. So that includes, for example, after the cat, right? A
Yeah.
lot of expectations would be, you would go a certain way, but then you kind of go the other way.
Right.
At the end of my tenure at McKinsey, I got a job offer from a big private equity firm, which offered me, probably like 2 or 3 times as much money as I earn today, and they were
Okay.
offering me that when I was barely 20.
Yeah.
So, but then I said, this is not what I want to do. I don't see myself living that life, and then I went to
Yeah.
Oxford instead.
Yeah.
Uh, so the question I always ask myself is, do I see myself being happy doing
Yeah.
the thing that I'm about to embark on? And that's
Yeah.
served me quite well.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense. And a quick shout out to our listeners about Subhash's really great online presence. So he posts really good Medium articles. His LinkedIn posts are really insightful, and he has a YouTube channel also. So really recommend everyone to go through all of these and learn more about what he's doing. So now. Uh, as we spoke about different experiences academically that you faced, were there any experiences that were pivotal, that guided your principles, changed how you made decisions to pursue a career in the impact space? So any pivotal experiences to guide you towards impact?
I wouldn't say there was anything kind of that jolted me into getting into the impact space. As most people who study economics in the country always have this dream that there'll be a development person of some
Yeah,
kind to
yeah,
the World Bank or something, right? And
true.
that was certainly something I had in my mind at
Yeah,
some point. And for me, McKinsey always was there for kind of a temporary path. Even at McKinsey, I did a lot of projects on the development side of things.
got it.
But when I went to Oxford, then this opportunity in impact investing opened up. And I said, look, it sounds interesting. You're creating impact through
Right.
market based solutions, and you're probably getting a decent salary while doing that. So I
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
this almost sounds impossible. Can I go and learn more? So I did
correct.
an internship at Omidyar Network at that point.
Okay.
But what made me fall in love with the space and the sector was the ethos of the organization. So I wouldn't say as much that I'm in love with impact investing or the impact sector, but I'm certainly in love with the organization that I'm at. And the
Got
reason that happened is because the culture of the organization being extremely flat. What the organization stands for, it stands for people having more agency over their lives. And if
it.
I
Right.
tie this back to my own personal journey, which was about me making my decisions independent of what my parents thought, what friends
Yeah,
thought, what society thought. And I said, that is something all of us deserve, is more
correct.
autonomy over our lives.
Exactly.
So that's what drove me into impact investing. And so I am in impact investing and I'm in the impact space because uh, I want people to have the same kind of privilege and opportunities to make their own decisions and fail and succeed or whatever, but do it on their own merit whenever they want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense. And we just spoke about how you got introduced into the impact investing space at Oxford. So tell me more about how your experience at uh, Oxford was as a Rhodes Scholar and as an M.Phil student.
Yeah, I mean, Oxford has a very different education culture than what I experienced in India.
Okay.
There were very few classes, probably 2 to 3 hours of classes a day, and that too, people said our course was among the tougher
Y-
ones.
Yeah.
And you're not infantilized in the sense that if you want to attend classes, you attend them. If you don't, you don't. Right? There's no
Correct.
attendance system,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Give you assignments. You want to complete those assignments, you do those. If you don't want to, you don't do them. So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that kind of
Yeah.
uh, studying culture. And obviously, clearly, it's a university which is done well. So I presume that culture works. It's
Yeah.
also extremely intense, right? The coursework is unlike anything that I had seen in India or experienced in India. It's a different level. But what
Got
was
it.
more important about Oxford was that student life there was essentially politicized in the
Okay.
sense that for while I was there, the Rhodes Must Fall movement was ironically at its peak, and a lot of
Oh,
my colleagues who were in Rhodes Scholars were
yeah.
leading that movement. So that political environment helped open up my mind to issues of the world. And
Right.
I, debated and grappled with that a lot. So I think the kind of person that I went into Oxford was very different from the one that came out, and
Yeah.
primarily that it made me think a lot more about the world around me than I had been doing till then.
Yeah.
So the experience at Oxford was laid back, but it was intellectually extremely stimulating. It was personally very rich. As I told you, I
Got
was
it.
a relatively studious guy when I
Yeah.
was studying in India, but when I went to Oxford, I kind of let my hair down and I was kind of
Yeah.
partying multiple times a week
Ye-
and all of that. So I think it's a far more holistic life
Development.
experience, if not an educational experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So I love that you drew the parallels between Indian education and your education at Oxford. And this was something I was very curious when I came across your profile, and as I researched more about you. So, as a student who was pursuing a non-BBA background at the undergrad level, you secured rank one in CAT exams. Now, tell me more about how intense that preparation period was, and what was your decision to not pursue an MBA? And currently, with the job description that you have right now, do you think an MBA would have suited you better or would have helped you better with your current role?
Sure. So here's a funny incident about for about 2 or 3 weeks before the actual CAT exam, I used to come to classes late. I used to be sleepy throughout the day, and people thought, "Oh my God, this guy's really working hard and preparing for CAT." But
Yeah.
actually, what I was doing was I was staying up till 3 or 4 every night playing Age of Empires with my friends. The reason was our college had just got LAN, so
Okay.
the first time we could actually play these kind of multiplayer games
Games.
at reasonable convenience. So I forgot about my CAT prep
Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks back. I don't recommend it, but it certainly
Yeah.
happened that I had the McKinsey job, so I knew there was a fallback option.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the point I'm making, however, through the story is CAT is not a game of intense preparation.
Okay. Got
It's
it.
a game of consistent preparation. So I
Mm.
started a year and a half possibly before the actual exam. I went to these classes probably 2 or 3 times a week, spent an hour, 2 hours there. Even the classes I chose, I went to the more traditional, bigger names, but the one I settled on was a smaller group because I really liked the professors there. They were friends. After classes, we would go out and have chole bhature and all of that. So
Yeah.
it was a very good, friendly atmosphere that helped me do well. So that was where it started, and putting in maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
Consistently over that 1.5 years
Yeah.
was very important. And then you have to kind of keep your mind clear. So at one point, I was not scoring as well in the mock cats, especially
Right.
on the verbal section. At some point, my professor came and said, "Look, don't worry about it. I think you're on the right path. Just keep going."
Yeah.
So that's what CAT prep would, to me, looks like. And the same I would say is true for GMAT or anything else that's an aptitude test, right? Where you're not
Right.
being tested on knowledge, where you're being tested on like verbal or
Right.
quantitative aptitude. That's important. And some things you can never overcome. Like I've always been bad with numbers. So even while I scored 100 percentile in CAT, I did not score 100 percentile in my quant section.
Okay.
So
Okay.
some things you can't change, so no need
Yeah.
to worry about that. Now the
Yeah.
decision to not go to an IM was because at that point I'd already been in college for 3 years, right? And I said, if I go to another college for 2 years, do I see myself enjoying that, right? Do I see
Yeah.
myself enjoying the same process of exams, classes, attendance,
Yeah.
curricular,
Yeah.
etc.? Maybe. And eventually I did go to Oxford, right? But I
Right.
said, not at this point. At this point, I need a break. I want to try something new. It'll be exciting and interesting to get your own money, manage your own life, etc. So
Exactly.
again, the decision was not based on any cost benefit analysis. It was purely based on the fact that I just felt I wouldn't enjoy it.
Right. Right. Makes sense. And just to talk about how investing, there are a lot of traditional jobs stemming from MBA for investing. And do you see an MBA as a valuable addition for someone who's trying to pursue investing and very specifically impact investing?
Yeah, at two levels. Firstly, because that's the expectation in the market that people who are doing investing. If you've done an MBA from a good school, either in India or abroad, there's a certain advantage you have. So I think
Yeah.
practically it makes sense. At a conceptual level and in a day-to-day level, it makes sense because at the end of the day, this is a numbers-based business, right? You're supposed
Right.
to put money in, get money out. So you need to
Yeah.
be comfortable with numbers. You need to be comfortable with making financial models and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the training that an MBA gives you. It gives you probably much better than many other degrees, and I think that's valuable. I
Right.
think MBA also forces you, especially the way these programs are run, to really network with people, collaborate with people, get to know them, etc. And those are again skills that are useful for a investing role because you're constantly out there
Right.
to
Right.
collaborate with lots of people.
Right.
So while I didn't take that path, I do believe that an MBA or a degree like that would be quite valuable for a job in investing. But at the end of the day, especially in early stage investing, the most important thing is intuition and risk appetite, right? And those
Yeah.
are the two
Yeah.
things the most.
Yeah. Got it. I really love what you're doing right now, and we just had a brief talk about how Omidyar is like a really good fit to who you are as a person. And your Instagram bio says that I can't believe I found my dream job already. And I don't think there are a lot of individuals in their late 20s who are able to say that at this point. So tell me more about what Omidyar Network does and what your role as a principal entails.
So, Omidyar Network India is a philanthropic investments firm which backs entrepreneurs, both for profit and non profit, who create or who help create a meaningful life for every Indian.
Yeah.
So, we've been in India for about 11 years now. We invest in 6 sectors that include financial inclusion, education, property rights, governance, emerging technologies, and digital society. And within each of these 6 sectors, we have a mix of for profit and non profit tools we use. So, we're trying to create social impact, and we believe social impact can come from any kind of entrepreneur. Doesn't
Right.
need to be just for profit or just not
For
for
profit.
profit. And
Yeah.
so we have this dual checkbook model to do that.
Yeah.
And we've deployed about $350 million in India, and since we've been
Oh.
here, and we intend to deploy a similar number over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's what the organization as a whole does. What is the day-to-day job is honestly just to look for entrepreneurs, to back them, and to be able to support them. So as a very typical VC construct, which is you spend probably 30 to 40% of your time looking out for opportunities,
Yeah.
both again for profit and not for profit, that you can invest in.
Yeah.
You take them through an investment process, you prepare the memos, there's an investment committee, you try to convince the investment committee, etc. That's the
Yeah.
30 to 40% of the job.
Yeah.
30 to 40% of the job is once you're done investing, that's when your real job starts, which is actually
Yeah.
trying to take both these non-profit and for-profit things to success. You have to be a good thought partner to the entrepreneur. You have to help the business in meaningful ways, in
Yeah.
fundraising, communications, governance, whatever they need. And then, of course, like in any other job, there's a 10 to 20% admin, which is like internal strategy
Yeah.
and engagement,
Definitely.
that kind of stuff. So that's what, on a day-to-day basis, the role looks like.
Got it. Got it. Sounds really exciting. And if you don't mind, I would love to hear more about your work over the years. Can you elucidate on some of the projects related to digital identity in India and Africa?
Sure, happy to do that. The project which defined my career and me in this profession pretty early on was a project called State of Aadhaar.
Oh.
So when Aadhaar was, the whole debate was at its peak in probably 3 or 4 years back. There were government would say, look, these are all the savings we've got, etc., etc., and this is why Aadhaar is great. And then the critics would say, look, people are dying because they're not getting food rations,
Yeah.
they're getting denied services, etc.
Correct.
In fact, both the worlds are far apart because there was no data. Sure, there
Yeah.
were questions of people dying, but if or getting denied their ration, but if 1% get denied ration versus 30%, it's very different consequences on how you solve it. So
Right.
we decided to fund the state of Aadhaar as an effort to bring data into this discussion. So in the last iteration of the report was a large survey of about 167,000 households in India.
Oh.
And that report called out nuances which were not otherwise present in the discourse. So, for example, the fact that third gender and homeless people are disproportionately more likely to be excluded from Aadhaar was not there.
Right.
The fact that non-Aadhaar related reasons for exclusion were much higher.
Yeah.
Was not there. So, this on the non-profit side, from a project grant, this was one of the things that was very exciting.
Got
On
it.
the for-profit side, I've invested in couple of companies which work on privacy tech. Um, in the US. So, for example, one of the companies I invested in was one called Learning Machine. So, what
Oh.
Learning Machine does, it goes and sells itself to universities and other big governments, and it issues credentials, which could be your diploma, which could be your driver's license, your health record, etc., directly to the individual with a
Right.
hash of it stored on the blockchain. So that
Oh.
there's no centralized repository and there's a direct convenience that the individual can share their records digitally and it's verifiable on the blockchain.
Got
So
it.
that's what the business was. The business did well. It was acquired eventually by another larger business. So on the for-profit side, that was one of the privacy tech companies that I invested in. And apart from that, there's a portfolio of 10 to 15 organizations that our work on digital society is supporting. Many of
Got
them are think tanks that do policy research. Many of them are direct consumer advocacy work. So, for example, recently we launched a social media campaign on data privacy. We reached about 50 million people through that. We
Oh.
launched a radio show which reached about 26 million people. It
Wow.
increased their privacy consciousness by 11%. So it's
Yeah.
an interesting job that you kind of get to do in the same day. You get to do for profit, you get to do policy research,
Yeah.
campaigns. So this is a very wide gamut of activities.
Yeah. Yeah. So, really exciting to see such large opportunities that are wide range of opportunities that are provided to people who are working at Omidyar. And I think we have listeners who are both students and who are people who are impact oriented and in that space. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of them are looking forward to working in such an ecosystem that Omidyar provides. So, can you tell me more about what does Omidyar look for in potential candidates, and how does one build the necessary skill sets and experiences to work in that ecosystem?
Look, for us as an organization, there is no, you know, textbook good candidate because we
Yeah.
believe and know that good candidates will come from different places. So if you look at
Right.
people who are currently associates on our team, they come from journalism, they come from management consulting, they come from iBanking, they come from development consulting, they
Yeah.
come from operations in factories, right? So
Yeah.
a very wide gamut of background. So because impact investing in particular is such an narrow field, right? Because
Yeah.
there's few firms who do it. They do. There's no kind of checkbox that you can say, if I, for example, do
Right.
a CFA, I have a better chance, or if I do an MBA, I have a better
Yeah.
chance. What we're looking for is people who show a high degree of competence no matter what they did, who show a certain amount of motivation to go out and get things done, because this is a very ambiguous job. You need to,
Definitely.
you're dealing with ambiguity all the time. You're dealing with
Yeah.
risk, you're dealing with failure day in, day out.
Yeah.
So people who show that they have worked in those kind of situations are people we really like. People who care about the issues that we work on, because if you don't care about an issue, it's very difficult for you to do well on that.
Definitely. Yeah.
And finally, as I said, from a functional perspective, the only thing that's really important is comfort with numbers.
Yeah.
You don't need to know how to develop the world's most complex model, but numbers shouldn't scare you, because otherwise it becomes quite challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. And uh, I really loved your thought process when in one of your YouTube videos and prior to what you said during your MBA preparation about how sacrifice doesn't drive success. It's about how happiness drives success. Now, um, I would love to know that relatability between happiness, personal responsibility, and your role at Omidyar and how that works together.
Right. So, look, the funny thing was, I started my Omidyar journey as an intern in the London office, doing as part of the strategy team.
Got it.
One of my colleagues there, I was catching up with him one on one, and he was in his probably late 30s, early 40s, and he said, "Look, do anything but don't get into Omidyar right away." So he said, "Look, you need to go out and experience the quote unquote real world before you get
Yeah.
into the impact space and all of that."
Yeah.
And again, for me, the decision was, is this something I see myself enjoying?
Right.
And that's when I said, look, I don't need to explore the world, because I see myself enjoying this. And maybe someday, who knows, Nishchit, I might come to regret this decision, right? But right now, I'm glad I made it 5 years back. So for me, therefore, that Omidyar Network India has provided me the platform to be able to shape my work in the direction that most excite me. So the work that I began with in 2016 is very different from the work that I'm doing today in the
Got
thematic
it.
areas,
Got
in
it.
the kind of tools I'm doing. And Omidyar Network India has always been very supportive of me in that entire journey. Which is to say, look, go out and do what you like to do. Obviously, there's an accountability that you have to do it well.
Definitely.
But to that very question, right? Do I enjoy what I'm doing? Am I, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. I wake up on Monday excited that I want to, get things
Yeah.
done, and that I think has really helped me in this role.
Got it. Got it. Sounds good. And I think the more companies we have that adopt this work culture, where they give the freedom and there's a level of accountability, I think everyone will be much happier in their jobs.
It's easier to do in a 30-35 member organization. I can see the
Yeah.
when you go to like 30,000 or 3 lakh, but
Yeah. All right. So, just talking about a few tips that our listeners would love to hear from you, right? So, I would love to get your insights about uh, in the digital space, specifically about how making technology safer and empowering individuals is a recurring narrative that you stand by. And I know that you've learned a lot from people and data, and as you've delved deeper into the system. Now, how has your view changed from 10 years back, before encountering so much of data and being part of these discourses at Oxford and working at Omidyar and looking at how data represents the realities?
yeah, look, for me, the data and technology is an instrument, right? The bigger question for me is one around individuals having rights and ownership over their lives. So, for example, would any of us be comfortable if there's a stalker who's standing outside or inside our room 24/7 watching us? We
Yeah,
wouldn't be, right? That's what we
yeah,
expect from the physical world. The
correct.
question is, in the digital world, that doesn't happen today, right? Because we are
Definitely.
constantly under surveillance, either by governments of different kinds or by the big tech companies. You know,
Company.
there's CCTV cameras on the road everywhere. There's every app, left, right, and center collects your exact location data, even if they don't
Yeah,
need it, etc. So I've
yeah,
always placed my work on privacy, not in some abstract, you want to give this number or you want to give that number or not, and
correct.
all of that. But it's this question of, are we under control of our lives and how that plays out? So that's the big transformation that happened for me, right? Because when I got out of Stephens, I was a lot more about education, sanitation, healthcare, or what one might call the foundational needs of a good life.
Right, right.
But then I realized that that is very, very important and non-negotiable. But
Right.
beyond that, if you really want to have a good life, you need to have control and agency and all of that. And that's why I
Right.
enjoy this work. If someone tells me, look, you have to work on other aspects of individual agency, I'll probably be equally happy.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Right.
but that's where I landed, and therefore for me also over the as I'm also learning more. There's so much to learn, right? In terms of the apps that you can download, in terms of the
Right.
classes you can take.
Right.
So all of that has been a journey. I've certainly in my personal life made a lot of changes, switching over to Signal, downloading this app called Dusra, which allows you to have a second phone number and reduce spam. And you keep coming
Got it.
across these things day in day out.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot out there.
Correct.
So that's the journey.
Yeah. And primarily, I come from NITK, which is an engineering college in India, and I would love to know how engineering students, CS and IT students in particular, computer science students, have a role beyond software development. What would you say about ethics and policy and product in that whole ecosystem of computer science?
Yeah, look, to be honest, us economists, lawyers, humanities people need it, but we can say whatever we want to say. At the end of the day, we are not the ones building technology and we don't have the
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah.
In this,
Exactly.
in this space, the most influential people are the technologists because whenever you go and speak to government or a corporation, you have to give them something in return, and that return is to build the technology for them. Look, at the end of
Exactly.
the day, India is seen as a leader in tech policy or technology more generally because we built things like Aadhaar, UPI, etc., and we scaled it in a way no country did. And who did it? Engineers did it, right?
Definitely.
So I genuinely think there's a very important role for engineers in this entire space.
Right.
Obviously, I feel like there's a lot that engineers will learn by talking to lawyers and economists and sociologists, etc., and vice versa.
Right.
Uh, so all of them have their roles, and in this space, however, I have noticed that there haven't been as many people with an engineering background,
Exactly.
which is problematic, right? Because if you don't
Yeah.
understand the technology as well enough, what basis do you comment on?
Yeah.
So we launched a fellowship last year, which is called the Young Leaders in Tech Policy Fellowship,
Oh.
which takes people who have an engineering background and at least 2 years of work experience, and we place
Oh.
them at either think tanks or non-profits which are building technology. So
Got
last
it.
year we ran the first cohort. There were five people who were selected. They have been placed at different think tanks and they're contributing and learning in different ways. So I think again, engineers have a very important role to play.
Yeah.
I think this is a space they probably don't know as well, and therefore
Right.
this fellowship, which is being anchored by the University of Chicago, is an important one in just making that journey happen.
Yeah. That's really exciting, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of students from our college would be looking forward to belong to that ecosystem in the near future. And talking about students and their responsibilities, uh, do you think that individual student impact is significant, and how do you think teenagers and young adults can step into the space and identify social impact in the right context? As you told, it's a very ambiguous space, and how do you navigate in this space?
Yeah, I would say go out and experiment, right? And don't put too much pressure on yourself to be impactful at scale from day one. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
look back at what were the first few things of social impact that I did. It was we had this system of evening classes where we taught underprivileged kids in college. I joined
Correct.
that. Right? Now
Yeah.
one might argue, look, you just affected one person. It's
Yeah.
the scale you had. Uh,
Yeah.
there was times when we would like go, the cleanliness drives and they'll take you to like a monument and along with other students you'll clean that up. One might argue, what's the point? Next day it'll be as dirty as ever.
Yeah.
We as part of our finance society we launched a financial literacy campaign where we kind of educated people about our karamcharis of the college about financial products and financial
Yeah.
education. But so some might argue, look, the problem there is they don't have enough money. It's not that they can't buy bank accounts and
Correct.
insurance. They
Correct.
don't have enough money to buy it. So
Yeah.
if I look back and say all of these things probably didn't create benefits for people in the long run or create impact for them. But I think it's important as a student not to put too much pressure on yourself. Go out and experiment,
Yeah.
do a few things, see what you enjoy. Uh,
Yeah.
and depending on what you enjoy, then you can take a call on what works for you, what doesn't. So,
Definitely.
for example, I had an internship with Bandhan Microfinance. So I did kind of 17 field visits and surveys and all of that.
Oh.
Extremely physically grueling. There were days when I cycled like 50 kilometers, 20 kilometers,
Oh my
etc.
God.
In the summer sun in rural West Bengal. It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I think there are many people who will do well and really enjoy that kind of role, but it wasn't
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
People who like the grassroots, like being around people, like meeting people, they would really enjoy that kind of role, but it wasn't
Exactly.
for me. So what I tell students is go out and start experimenting with things.
Yeah,
Don't put
yeah.
pressure on yourself to find your perfect social impact journey on day one.
Correct, correct. Yeah. And I relate so much to what you're saying because every time I've seen students being involved in impact, I think it might be from their parents, it might be from the faculty. They dismiss it outright by saying, what you're doing is not impactful, right? It's very irrelevant. What you're doing is a drop in an ocean, right? It does not make a difference. But these experiences lead up to choices that you make eventually. And that's the whole point of creating this podcast where we're trying to say you're not a drop in an ocean, you're an entire ocean in a drop. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And finally, I would like to talk about your decade of experiences, right? Your achievements and the rock bottoms that you've hit. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? Was there something that you wish you did differently?
I wish I had a lot more fun when age was on my side. It's a bit difficult
Yeah,
to play catch up later in
yeah,
life. But I think there's obviously all most people would probably prefer to be serious in their academic and professional lives because they want to get
correct.
somewhere, and that's really important. If you don't have money and if you don't have financial security, life's probably going to be tough.
Definitely.
But at the same time, though you only live once, those years will never come back. So the
Yeah,
advice I would have given to the 20-year-old me was to probably calm down a little bit, go out,
yeah,
enjoy, enjoy the world more, and be like, things will work
yeah,
themselves out. Don't take stress
yeah,
about every internship you didn't get or every job
yeah.
rejection you got. You just got to keep moving along consistently, and things will happen.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And finally, right, I really believe that books are a really good way to put forth ideas. And I would like to know if there are any books that have significantly impacted your worldview that our listeners should also read and get a few insights about this space.
Not really, in the sense the kind of books I read are typically non-fiction,
Got it.
educational stuff. For me, yeah, those are kind of books I read. In terms of life-changing books, again, nothing serious. What I tried to do was dabble again in a bunch of things, and then I realized
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
fiction is not for me. I just don't
Correct.
find it interesting. Right? So, people need to do what works for them. What has been most useful for me is almost to observe and learn from people around me, right? And so those are my books.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so one of the bosses I had at McKinsey had a deep impact on me, gave me a lot more confidence, and I think that's really helped me.
Got it.
My first boss at Omidyar, I think, has enabled me in so many ways that I can't see myself being where I am without his
Yeah.
support. My current bosses at Omidyar. So I look at these people, I see what's the best in them, right, and what can I imbibe.
Makes sense.
So that's what
Yeah.
I encourage people to do, right?
Yeah.
Look for your real life heroes and sheroes, and they're never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Don't be objective about them, but at the same time,
Yeah.
imbibe what's best in them.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So thank you so much for coming on this call. We've had such a great conversation talking about such wide variety of topics from your student life, from the different choices that you made during your student life, and finally the work that you do at Omidyar currently. Uh, Again, I would strongly recommend every listener to search for Subhashish's blog on Medium and YouTube channel, and finally his LinkedIn. So thank you so much again for making this podcast happen. Uh, uh, we would look forward to talking to you once more if time permits.
Thanks so much for having me, Mr. Good
Yeah.
luck.
All
Bye.
right.